Welcome to episode 372, Wilbur Ross, the only fake self-made billionaire in the world. This is an outline of episode 372. There are two reasons why we study fake self-made billionaire, in this case Wilbur Ross. First, because they are very rare. Second, because I'm curious, and maybe you should too. Let us meet Wilbur Ross.
We, at some point, probably within the next 18 months, are likely to go into a recession, especially, frankly, if you have Hillary Clinton elected and she increases taxes. But with or without that, we have a great risk of going into recession. The Fed's toolbox is basically empty. They need to replenish that toolbox in order to have a way to help if and when we get into this recession that I see in the next 18 or so months.
Wilbur Ross was born in Weehawken, New Jersey in 1937. Here's a map of Weehawken. Wilbur Ross' father is a lawyer. He went to a Catholic school, Xavier Catholic School. This is the picture of Xavier Catholic School in New York City. Wilbur Ross graduated from Yale University in 1959 and Harvard MBA in 1961. And he is married to a very beautiful wife. It was reported in the early 1990s, Wilbur Ross helped or bailed out Donald Trump from the bankruptcy of Resort International in Atlantic City. He worked 24 years as a managing director at Rothschild, Inc., and his nickname is King of Bankruptcy. Around February 2017, Wilbur Ross was confirmed as Commerce Secretary in the Trump administration. He is a trade hawk. Free trade is a slogan, not a reality.
Joining me, legendary investor and Trump economic advisor Wilbur Ross.
But free trade is a slogan. Free trade is not a reality. And just like all jobs are not created with equal pay, not all trade works equally well.
What do you think the biggest problem with trade is right now for us?
The deficit. Kasich says, look, trade growth builds the economy. That's only true to the degree that it doesn't incur a deficit. Economics 101.
Right, in other words, if you're selling more than you're taking in, then that's a good thing. But if you're taking in more than you're selling, then you're in that deficit category.
Economics 101 says that trade deficits are a direct subtraction from GDP, period. End of story. So the fiction that all trade is equal is simply wrong.
Forbes magazine discovered he's a fake billionaire and kick him out of the Forbes list.
Every year, people coming into the White House have to file a bunch of documents stating how much money they have, what all their assets are, what all their debt is. And for Wilbur Ross, we've been looking at him for years and years, and we thought that he was worth about $2.9 billion. So when the forms came out, we went through and looked at it line by line. It was 57 pages, and by the end of it, we tallied it all up, and we couldn't get anywhere close to $2.9 billion. So reached out to Wilbur Ross and said, hey, I'm sorry, but it looks like we're gonna have to kick you off of the Forbes 400. Is because shortly after the election, I transferred a bunch of assets into trusts for my family members, and that left more than $2 billion of my family's wealth off of my personal financial disclosure report. So I asked Wilbur Ross, all right, so if it's not you who's the beneficiary of these trusts, who actually does get the money in them? And what he told me is, well, it's family members, children and that sort of thing. And so I tried to press him a little bit more on it. I said, well, is it just your children? No, there are some other children. His wife had been married previously. I said, okay, so it's your children and her children as well, your two stepchildren. And he said, no, there are actually some third parties involved. And then I continued pressing him and said, okay, well, what are the third parties? And he said, well, as you probably know, my wife and I have both been married a few times. So, and then he ended by saying definitively that there were no beneficiaries outside of his family members to the trust. This story started with a discrepancy. The forms listed one thing, and Wilbur Ross had told us previously that he was worth.
So, what is the discrepancy? Here I do the math. $2.9 billion versus $700 million. Wow, That's a 400% discrepancy or exaggeration. Ironically, Wilbur Ross is a self-proclaimed data guru from his day at Harvard Business School.
I may be the only nominee ever for a Commerce Secretary who actually worked as a census taker. When I was working my way through Harvard Business School, I was a census taker, what they more technically call an enumerator, in the Scully Square area of Boston.
Fake millionaires are very common. See this picture? Fake billionaires are very rare. What have I learned today? Two things. First, there's only one fake self-made billionaire in the world out of a database of 3,000. Second, there's only one self-made billionaire who committed suicide, and that was Jesse Livermore in 1940. Thank you for watching. Please tell me if you think self-made billionaires are honest and optimistic. Wishing everyone peace and prosperity.